Welcome back to segment 3 of show 17. Apparently next week we're going to have a segment called Who Has More Integrity? Because that's now what CT wants to discuss. Okay, so going to lightning round.
All right, first question's for you, Ash. Despite all the gloom and doom around media and content, why is sports such a resilient?
Yeah, so, okay, sports and news, along with how-to and porn, are like very different kinds of content.
Yeah, but no one gets fanatical about how-to and porn the way they do it.
Well, I beg to differ. No, but I'm just saying those are 4 of maybe 5 or 6 kinds of content that are very different from the rules of content. But to focus now on sports and news, news is ultimately a commodity, unless you have something crazy like 60 Minutes sits down with Steve Jobs or something, or the author of the Steve Jobs bio. So sports is not a commodity. So I think as much as you're seeing challenges around content and challenges around cord cutting, and the fact that sports is generally a live thing, that is why sports is the outlier. That is why you're going to see a lot of money invested, and that's why ESPN is worth a bundle. Like, I think Hearst owns a chunk of ESPN. I think that's worth more than everything else they own almost. Maybe not. I mean, the Mademoiselle or Cosmo or whatever they have is a money, is a cash cow. Right. But my point is, ultimately at the core, because it's really the opposite of commodity, and because of the live nature means you can't like cut around it. You can't really, I mean, you could pirate it, but how many people want to watch a Super Bowl on a little like, random pirated website online? So that has so much power, and I think sports is a great bet if you're an investor because of those rights and the live factor. That's my answer.
Your 2 cents.
Yep. Next, does Facebook, because we haven't talked enough about Facebook on this show, does Facebook have a chance with this Buffy phone, which used to be called Slayer, which was a bit too violent, so they went with Buffy. It's basically like an HTC phone.
Right, and it's powered by Android. This is what I think what's interesting. I think Facebook has a chance to actually, produce a popular phone and something that really brings in more users or brings users in more closely. I think what's interesting, though, is that they're building it off Android. It's supposed to be a very customized version of Android, but just the same, they're building it off of a Google operating system. And I keep bringing up this article, and I haven't looked up the author, but it was a TechCrunch article shortly after Google Plus launched that pretty much saying is like, regardless of Google Plus's chances of succeeding or failing, think of it in terms of a big picture. This could be a big Trojan horse for Google. Well, I think this Buffy phone just might be Google's Trojan horse to get behind the Facebook wall. At the end of the day, mobile collects more data on you than anything. That's really what Facebook and Google are competing over. They're competing over data so that they can compete over advertising platforms. So if Facebook, actually, the more successful the Buffy phone is, the more that Google will be able to get behind the wall and get a piece of that pie. So yeah, the phone has a chance, but it doesn't have a chance of turning them into a Google killer.
Okay, interesting. On a follow-up, I want to do a segment on Facebook, Microsoft. Microsoft's invested, $240 million for a 1.6% stake, valuing Facebook at $15 billion a couple of years ago. That was a great deal in hindsight. We should talk about where is the end game. Is it just an investment that they'll eventually get liquidity, or do you see a broader, deeper partnership? But we'll touch on that later, because this is lightning round, not mild drizzle. Okay, another question for you. NBC, okay, so Jimmy Fallon played lying ass bitch when...
his band did.
His band did when Bachmann, what's her first name again?
Michelle
Bachmann, crazy woman there, walked on... Are we going to have to apologize because I called her crazy woman? I don't know. Don't think so. But she walks on the set, the band plays lying ass bitch. 1, does NBC have to apologize? But 2, is Jimmy Fallon really like... innocent, or was he like, guys, when she comes on, let's play?
Well, okay, let's deal with 2 first. How do we know? Usually these late night talk show hosts, they at least seem to have this really good rapport with the head of their band, the lead of their band. So that could have just been the band's call. It could have been his call. It's perfectly plausible either way. So I don't know. But does NBC have to apologize? Unfortunately, yes. The GOP sees NBC.
Coming from you, I'm shocked. But okay, go on.
Well, no, I'm going to look at this. I don't think they should, but they have to, because the GOP still sees NBC as part of, the liberal media. We have a presidential race coming up, and at the end of the day, if NBC wants its journalists to continue to have access to the GOP during the election campaign, they're going to have to smooth that kind of thing over. So not only do they have to apologize, but they actually have to force Jimmy Fallon to apologize. Ooh. And I feel really bad. He did apologize, I think, too. And I feel really bad for him, because his job is to make fun of people. And when you have to apologize for doing a good job, it just really sucks.
Okay, so I have a little comment here, which is, sometimes we'll get pitches from PR firms to do the story around or with one of their clients, and then they're always very happy, but oftentimes afterwards they're like, oh, this was great, but it would have been good if you guys would have also covered this or that. And I very politely go, if you want to control the message, advertise. Spend a check, spend your money, advertise. You more or less control the message. When you roll the dice with PR, you think you're getting this great,
right.
But I go, then it's like a double-edged sword. It's the same thing. If she wants to be treated in a certain way, then do an interview with Katie Couric or 60 Minutes. You're going on Jimmy Fallon.
What do you expect?
What do you expect? That's why at least when let's say Sarah Palin goes on NBC, yeah, there's going to be some humor at your expense. So if she's going on late night, I think it's what were you expecting? Your handlers, what did they, Now, playing lying ass bitch might be a bit over the top.
It was so subtle though.
But that's it. This is also the Barbara Walters effect. Nobody would notice until you go, please don't take a picture of my house, and then everybody takes a picture of your house. So now we're talking about it, and people are like, well, why? Is Michelle Bachmann some kind of lying ass bitch? Because why would she object to this? So I think this is the kind of thing that they probably should have let it slide. But I get your point, that the same way that Obama just for a while, or maybe still, does not grant any access to Fox, because they compare him to, they probably call him
Black Hitler.
Yeah, but okay, I was going to say they probably still call him Osama. I get that point, that if NBC wants access to the grand old party, then they have to apologize. Next question.
All right, so Ash, BlackBerry's stock just keeps plummeting. Where did they go wrong?
I think they went wrong. One, the two founders structure that are also co-CEOs rarely works, one. Two, they're very smart guys, very wealthy guys, very accomplished guys, but at some point you suffer from hubris and arrogance. I mean, I'm not knocking them, but I sort of am.
If I had that money, I'd be arrogant.
Yeah, exactly. And three, they really, really became the leading pioneering communications tool to emerge in over a decade or ever. So I think they got complacent. And they're not web guys. You've seen a lot of insiders come out and say, basically they were content with email messaging. They never understood their browser. I've never used their browser. I actually switched to iPhone because I was as the CEO of an online video company, I can't possibly start wrapping my head around mobile opportunities if I'm using a BlackBerry. I go, the browser just doesn't cut it. So I think it was everything. It was management, it was product, and it was strategy. But at the same time, I don't think, some people say, the question is, are they the next Palm? Are they going to disappear?
It's hard to imagine them doing that just because they're so tied into the business community, like Microsoft is tied in.
Okay, but here's the nuance. The nuance is with Microsoft, it's harder for people to show up to work.
Differences, yeah.
No, it's harder for people to show up saying, well, I'm going to use a Mac at the office, so why do I have this PC here? But once you saw the trends that people who had an expense account, a paid BlackBerry starting to show up and use an iPhone, then their IT departments had to support it, and then the iPhone basically got the Trojan horse into corporations. So I think they're actually a bit more, endangered than Microsoft. But I do think that for them, maybe at this juncture, it also is harder to just accept a sale because their share is trading at below book value, that they're like, well, we're not going to realize much value if we sell now. You're not supposed to sell low.
Right.
You're supposed to sell high. So I think for them now, they're maybe in this sort of vicious downward spiral where, they're stuck. I don't know what they're going to do.
I would totally agree. And I think products suffered a lot because of management.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. Each year, Black Friday rolls around. We see horrible signs of humanity's worst, traits. That's one video on Business Insider, which speaks volumes. I think the moon is out. But my point is, we also see that online shopping keeps growing. I think online shopping was 25% higher than the previous year.
Right.
My point is, are we going to be at a point where basically people stop being animals and going into stores on Black Friday because they can't handle it? Or forget how much growth you see online, it'll always be this thing, this cultural phenomenon?
Well, I don't know if it'll a cultural phenomenon. I may or may not be strong, but I don't think brick and mortar Black Friday is really going to go away. You see, we do spend more and more online every year, as companies figure out what they can sell online and what they can't. But at the end of the day, a Black Friday is really about clearing inventory, getting back into the black. Whether you're online or you're brick and mortar, you're still going to have an incentive to do that. There's some businesses that are always going to be brick and mortar. they're always going to have to dump inventory. So even though, the brick and mortar guys don't even make money on Black Friday, they just kind of break even. And the online guys, because of their smaller overhead, do make money. The brick and mortar guys are still going to do it. And people will still go in there looking for that $2 toaster if they think they can get it.
I think it was a $2 waffle maker. Next up?
Email of the week. So we have Mark from New York. And he's asking, when will digital advertising start to act like other types of advertising with regard to growth rates?
Okay, so in other forms of advertising, print, TV, it's generally, you're not going to see, you might see annual growth year over year, each quarter over, like Q1 over Q1 of year after year. But sequentially, you don't always see higher revenue, right? So sequentially, it's quarter over quarter, so Q3 to Q4. So for the longest time online, you've sometimes seen each quarter over a long 2, 3, 4 year period, always growing, right?
Right.
I think that will still continue more or less as more money comes online. However, one thing has really dramatically changed this year, where you're seeing a lot less opportunistic funds where people are just going to spend money, like ad agencies are just going to come out in like October, November and say, oh, look, we got an extra 10 million we need to spend, let's spend it. What we're now seeing is companies, ad agencies and marketers really planning for the year. A lot of the biggest ad agencies have already planned their 2012 budgets. It's crazy. You'll go into an ad agency and you're pitching them, and they're like, oh, this is great. We'll consider it for 2013. I'm like, 2013? What the hell? They're like, well, we're already planned for 2012. So I think you're now seeing this scenario where, one, yes, over a long period, sequentially, revenue keeps going up, but really it's more annually, quarter over quarter. Year over year revenues are going to grow, but sequentially you may see Q4 being really strong, Q1 being puny, and that's the way things usually work. But the biggest change is, like, speaking to other CEOs, they've sort of confirmed this. A lot of them are telling me that Q4 did not really meet their expectations. They think that Q3 is going to be their best quarter. That is a bit of an anomaly. In my 15, 12, whatever years of working online, Q4 has always been very strong. November has always been stronger than December because December people start getting sloshed on eggnog and they forget to send back the contract and all. So it's normal for November to be stronger than December, but that Q3 for a lot of companies is going to be the best quarter of the year. Not for all, I think, but for a lot of digital media companies that I'm speaking to. I think that starts to show a signal in the market. Again, it could be just anecdotal and a few CEOs say that, but I think you're going to see a lot of companies, especially the small, mid-sized companies, not hit their Q4, which was maybe extremely high based on expectations and not any realistic sense.
It's funny, quick anecdote, on my agency experience side, I've always noticed that Q4 is very quiet. They actually encourage people to work less so that they can pay them less. Q3 was always the strongest in terms of both doing business and getting work done.
There you have it. Thank you for joining us. This was Show 17. Catch us next week for Show 18 of HipMojo.